Today we have Calvin Clemons. He's the Industrial and Trade Director, and he works at Minnesota State Southeast College. Thank you for joining us today, Calvin.
You bet. Happy to be here.
Yes. Can you tell us what you do in your job and your title?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the Director of Trade and Technology at Minnesota State College Southeast. We have campuses in both Winona and Red Wing. My main role, Jamie, as director is to help promote advanced manufacturing in two arenas. One with the businesses in our community, what training can the college provide to them? And two, what training can we provide to high school students interested in advanced manufacturing? So that's my main role.
And that's exactly why we're doing this video, to let students, high school students, see the different jobs out in the community and the various avenues that they could pursue. How long have you been in this role?
I've just been in this role for 1 year. Prior to that, I was in industry for electronics manufacturing industry for 30 plus years. So took an early retirement and thought this was a great way to kind of give back to the community and keep manufacturing alive and well in Minnesota and the US. So.
And did you have to have any specific training going from industry to a career like this, or was it your background that allowed you to take such a job?
Yeah, great question. It was really my background. The job requires a 4-year degree. I have a bachelor's of science from Iowa State University in industrial engineering. So I met that requirement. And then I think it required 5 years of, industry experience, which I more than covered.
So 30 years, and you took an early retirement, but you decided not to retire. You said you wanted to give back. How in this role are you giving back?
Yeah, just a little context. In those 30 years, and we probably go through that, I spent a lot of time on an airplane away from home and my family, and really just felt like to get a little better work-life balance, I needed to slow down. So I took a year off, and then this opportunity came up at the college when one of the deans went on military leave, and that created this specific opportunity. But I had always been thinking about either doing some adjunct teaching or getting involved with academics in some capacity. I hadn't really thought about administration, but it fit my kind of management background pretty well. In terms of giving back, it's literally what it says. I mean, I kind of reflect back on when I was in high school. I didn't know a lot about advanced manufacturing or anything growing up in our rural community. And I kind of wish there was somebody around like me to maybe help provide some advice or mentorship in that regard. And then in terms of working with the local industries, my number one problem as a manager in manufacturing was finding skilled and talented employees interested in manufacturing. And so if I can help them in that regard, so much the better.
Perfect. What other technical skills are you using right now in this job? You mentioned managerial. Is there anything else that you could describe for us?
Sure. I have some background in sales and marketing. And so, as I'm working with the businesses, for example, in town, trying to listen and understand what their needs are and match that to either our standard curriculum or our custom curriculum is important. Project management is also important. I'm overseeing a National Science Foundation grant of approximately $500,000 over the next 3 years, whereby we're putting an 11 credit engineering and CNC machining certificate curriculum into 6 regional high schools to give those students a jump start. If they choose to pursue a 2-year or a 4-year degree, they'll get 11 credits under their belt. So managing that project is one of my responsibilities. And then I would say the last one is really strategic planning, working with the deans and the faculty and our industry advisory boards to really understand where advanced manufacturing is going and how we need to continually improve on our programs and possibly add a new program. For example, I spent the last year helping to launch a mechatronics and automation program at the college, because we're all, I guess, aware that, you know, there's more and more automation and robotics and so forth coming into manufacturing for safety and efficiency and so forth. And so I've spent a great deal of time writing grants and working with companies to raise money. We were able to raise about $725,000 in grant money to help, you know, get that program up on its legs in Winona. And now we're going to do the same thing in the Red Wing campus. So.
Wow. You mentioned your career in 30 years of industry. Can you take us through, like you said, graduating high school? Did you start college right away, or how did that journey happen?
Yeah, if I go way back when, even though I grew up in a small rural community in Iowa, I was fortunate enough myself to get like 20 some college credits in high school. They were all, you know, what you might expect in terms of chemistry, calculus, and English. I kind of sure wish they had some of this engineering type of college training, but they didn't. But anyway, I graduated high school and I went right to Iowa State University in industrial engineering. Again, that was a far cry from me growing up on a farm, but it looked very interesting to me, and the whole idea of working in a factory with process optimization was appealing to me, even though I didn't probably really know what that meant at the time. But after I graduated from Iowa State, I had a number of offers, and I selected to go with IBM Corporation, and because I liked the technology, and ended up moving to New York and working in the Poughkeepsie, New York area, about an hour north of the city, for 5 years. I was an industrial engineer in their semiconductor wafer fab operation. So that was extremely interesting to me, doing capacity and resource planning and facilities layout and that sort of thing, doing computer simulations. After 5 years, I did request a transfer back to the Rochester, Minnesota operation, to get back to the Midwest, frankly. And I started and worked a couple years in the disk drive area there as an engineer. That operation was moved back to San Jose, and I took another job at that time staying in Rochester rather than moving to California. And worked in what's called the ECAT area, electronic card assembly and test, or circuit board area, and spent a few years there. And then I came to really my first inflection point, Jamie, in my career. I like to say they dragged me kicking and screaming into management, because I had been an individual contributor for about 10 years at this point, working as an engineer, and really enjoyed that. And as you're aware, management is a whole different animal with the human resource element, personnel management, performance management, delegation, a whole different set of requirements and skills. But fortunately, IBM is great at training managers, and so I had a good combination of formal education and on-the-job training. I spent a couple years in management, managing engineering and quality, and so that was a great broadening exposure for me. And then at this point, there was another big inflection point. The IBM decided to sell off the division that I was working in, and I was part of that divestiture team, and we ended up being acquired by a company called Celestica Corporation. It was a Canadian-based company, actually a spin-off from IBM back in the day. Celestica does contract manufacturing, which means they don't build anything themselves that says Celestica. They have Fortune 500 customers where they're building electronics for companies like IBM or Dell or Sun or others, in the medical, in all sorts of arenas, medical, industrial, computing. Anyway, that was a huge change, going from a big OEM to, this was a $10 billion company, but still quite a bit smaller than IBM. And then going from like 40% profit margins to 4% profit margins was a challenge. So I spent 4 years there with Celestica, and because it was smaller, I was able to move up quite nicely. I started as a manager of site support, and got to build a brand new 200,000 square foot building as part of that role, and do all the conversions off of the IBM systems to Celestica systems. So very, very good educational experience there. Then I moved into my first sales role, Director of Business Development. And then a year later, I was Director of Operations, overseeing 400 employees on the production floor there at Celestica. Then there was another big inflection point. Unfortunately, the decision was made to close down that factory, and all the products moved overseas, which is, something we see all too often. And, part of the reason, going full circle, why I want to try to work with companies and see how we keep business in the US. But it happened, and we made that through that. And as they say, when one door closes, another one opens. And I could have stayed with Celestica and moved to the East Coast, Jamie, but I decided to stay in the Midwest and landed a very good job as Director of Operations with Benchmark Electronics, and spent my next 15 years there, kind of rising through the ranks, getting a general manager job over Winona and Rochester, and then a few years later getting to a vice president of operations job, managing 4 or 5 sites. And then, a few years later, being a group president, reporting to the CEO, overseeing our North America operations, which I think was 7 sites and a little over $1 billion annual revenue. So, including sites in Mexico. And I know I've been going on for a while, but my last few years after that, I spent in corporate sales and marketing, primarily overseeing our industrial division, and about a $500 million book of business there. So, and so that was long-winded, but you probably got a sense that I spent a lot of time away from home, and that's when I decided that it was time to, I've got a couple of kids, obviously, and a wife, and I just needed to get back home. So.
Well, and I think that that description really painted the picture for why this job's a good fit for you. I mean, you talked about the managerial and the grant that you're managing, and look at your experiences. It does speak clearly to this job being a good fit for you. So thank you for that description.
Sure.
As you've taken these jobs over the years, what would be one takeaway when people are looking at jobs and looking at careers that you'd say look for that next job?
Yeah, I think probably a couple things as I reflected back over my resume preparing for this. One, I think, it's important to understand yourself, and do you want to be an individual contributor, or do you want to be in management, leading and delegating? And I still remember my first IBM manager that dragged me kicking and screaming, saying, you can do a lot as an individual, but you can do, 10x that as a manager or a leader. And I found that to be true and rewarding for myself, but that's an individual decision. And then I would say, I went from a very big company. Every progression, I went smaller and smaller and smaller, because Benchmark was about $3 billion compared to a $10 billion Celestica. And so think about whether you want to be in a big company or a small company. I found it extremely rewarding to be in a small company because of the opportunities for advancement, and you get to wear multiple hats and get to do a lot of different cool things. So just a couple of things, I guess, to think about.
Yeah, perfect. And as high school students are looking at this, and we're talking 15, 16-year-olds, if they are interested in the manufacturing and those types of careers, what kind of high school classes should they take? I know you mentioned some of the calculus and chemistry, but are there other classes they should be looking into while they're?
Yeah, there again, I think, I'm probably best capable to talk about if you're pursuing an engineering career. Any STEM class that you can take in science, physics, calculus, those are the first couple years of courses in a 4-year engineering program. And so the better equipped you are, when you get to college, so much the better. I would also say any drafting or CAD classes like we offer are good foundation. And potentially some of the hands-on skills. A lot of industries are using 3D printing, for example, or CNC, programming, and so those would be great skills. And then I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't say computer programming, because and working with spreadsheets, because that's kind of at least the spreadsheets is an everyday occurrence in any engineering role. So if you're looking at a trades program, maybe a 1-year or 2-year, welding or machining diploma, the more you can get that hands-on experience, whether it be through a college like ours or summer internships, the better position you're going to be for success.
Thank you. As we close, sometimes students want to follow up with an email or a phone call. Is there a preferred method you'd want them to reach out if they had further questions for you?
Yeah, I think probably email is the best. And then if it warranted, further, follow up, I'd certainly share my phone. It's calvin.clemons@southeastminnesota.edu.
Perfect.
And Clemons is Clemons.
Well, thank you for your time today, and I'm sure the kids will love the video.
All right. Thanks, Jamie.